Welcome to the Awesomeness in Action radio show. You are listening to WDRB Media, the voice of the community, the only station giving you double the information and inspiration. I'm your host, Roshana Price, international author, coach, speaker, and trainer. This show is brought to you by Erie Success. Erie Success is a strategic partner that focuses on adult bullying and conflict resolution. You can learn more about Erie Success by visiting eriesuccess.com. That is EYRIE success.com. And today I have in studio and with me all the way from across the pond, the big pond, I have with me Bindi that is here all the way from Australia with Ethical Change Agency. Welcome to the show, Bindi.
Thank you so much for having me, Roshana.
You're welcome. I remember when we met online, several months ago, and you reached out in the midst of a really hard time. But before we dive into that, tell everyone who you are, where you're from, a little bit more about yourself.
Okay, well, I'm Bindi Heit. I obviously am based here in Australia, in Brisbane and Queensland, and I am the CEO and founder of Ethical Change Agency. And basically, the mission behind Ethical Change Agency is I'm here to help ethical business owners, change makers, holistic healers to align their message with their mission and to create collective change in the world. So I also, as you know, have the Ethical Evolution podcast that sits alongside that and supports that mission. And we spread the stories of people all around the world who are creating collective change and making the world a better place.
That collective change is so critical and needed. The one thing that 2020 has exposed us all to, right, is this core of humanity. That's what I'll call it. The core of humanity. Right, wrong, or indifferent, we have seen the core of humanity. That just struck a chord with you. Yeah.
Oh, did you feel that?
Did you feel that? I could, yes.
Yeah, like, isn't it funny when humans go through an experience they've never been through before, how they react? And you know, reacting to uncertainty and change for some people is more than they can cope with. And it brings out the best or the worst in people, depending upon, you know, how they're wired. And boy, have we seen that.
Boy, I mean, in ways that have created shock and awe in some ways. And then in other ways, it's just for the first time, maybe it's like, oh, the soul of humanity. There are places where it's really good. And then there are places where it's dark and it's unnecessary and just causes you to, or I'll speak for myself, and you can tell me if this ever has happened to you, where when you see something that is so egregious or so terrible that you're just like, I can't even believe that this exists.
Yeah, look, there's been moments this year where you just sit there in disbelief going, what is going on with the world? And, you know, am I still in it? So for me, it's taken some time, but I think if we reflect back this year, you know, my theme at the end of this is that through everyone that I've spoken to around the world, it's been that I think collectively we've found what really matters.
Yeah, what really matters. What are some themes that you're seeing as you've been talking to different people all across the globe?
Well, I mean, you know, we've all gone through a shared experience, regardless of where we live. You know, at the beginning of the pandemic, one of the themes that really grabbed me was that, what you do today impacts my tomorrow. So regardless of, you know, you being there in Charlotte and me being here in Brisbane,
Yes.
Our actions impact each other. And we've seen that through this pandemic, that one person can impact many. So that was one of the themes. You know, another is we've learnt to love local. So, you know, because we haven't been able to travel, we haven't been able to, you know, get out of our communities, it's actually helped us to build our communities where we are and also to grow local business again. So I've seen, you know, things that we used to do years ago that we'd stopped doing, we're getting back to those ways again. And you know, everything's changing back to the way things used to be. So there's been some blessings through 2020 and this experience that we've shared together globally, I think.
I would say so too. Absolutely. The blessing has come from also, I think the pace of life has slowed,
Yeah.
which is great. I have such gratitude for being able to slow down the pace of life. And yet it still is fast because there are some
Mm,
days where it's like, oh, wow, this is a long day. But then you look up and we're already close to the end of the year.
I know.
Right. And when we met around March, April timeframe, it was kind of like, is this year ever going to be over? And then before you know it, we're here, we're here. And so I
Yeah.
think that's another blessing is how we've been able to use time
Mm,
to really be an advantage. Or for some, I know many that have just decided, I didn't need to do all of the things I was doing before. My life was really full. Are
mm.
there any things that you're like, yeah, I don't do that anymore, and I won't go back to that?
Yeah, I think yeah, being in isolation for a long time as well, you do look at what you're spending your time on,
Mhm.
and in that time you're trying to find what brings you joy, particularly if you're on your own.
Yeah.
And for me, I was never busier, but really I got to a point where I was beginning to burn out, and so I just went, nah, I've actually got to put me first.
Mhm.
And so I actually changed my business model to do different work and do the things that light me up, and that's become part of my whole mission in what I do with my clients is actually for them to do the same. So yeah, it's actually, devoting your time and energy to the things that are your passion, that light you up and make you happy. Because why spend hours and hours in a day, dragging yourself through something that is agonizing for you when you have a choice not to,
Mhm. Yeah, you have a
and you
choice.
can turn it around to be better. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and stepping into that choice,
Mm,
and
mm,
really, maybe that's another blessing even out of this year is maybe for the first time people saying, "Wait, I do have a choice."
yeah.
Because when the pandemic hit, everything kind of shut down and stalled, and I know in Australia, there was a shutdown, like a full lockdown, like, do not go anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah,
Mhm.
it was, and thankfully, our borders have only just opened now, and we're able to travel around the country, which is great because people can see family for Christmas and things like that. And I know over in the States, it's not quite the same story, which is quite sad. But yeah, it was at a point where we couldn't leave our own suburbs and communities, and to the point where it actually enforced by police. So yeah,
Wow. Yeah, and having police, law enforcement have to come in to that part
mm,
of life was for many people, even in the places where it happened here in the United States at certain points in New York City and other bigger cities, because of that, that created this like, oh, what is happening? Or like the infringement
mm.
on yes. So did you guys experience that in Australia?
There was a little bit in the southern parts of Australia where, people just wanted to, go to the shops or go for a walk. And if they got beyond a certain point, they, were actually outside of their boundaries and would get arrested. So, yeah, there was a little bit of unrest and,
Mhm.
people just not seeing any sense in it. But, when we look back on it, it was done for a reason.
Reason.
And
Yeah.
we're in such a good position now because of it.
Yes. And
Mm,
that's so what did you say? What I do today affects your
mm,
tomorrow. And so one of the things that has happened, even the hardest things, is the sacrifices that so many have had to make in order to ensure the safety and the health of others. And you see
that's right.
people, some people are able to do that easily and freely, and
Mm.
other people really struggle with personal self-sacrifice for the public good or the greater good.
That's right. They
Mm.
don't see themselves as a part of a community and part of a wider, collective, that we're all part of this solution, and for someone to be so selfish to the point where they put their own needs above the community, that's where we begin to have problems.
Yeah, that's when it feels more like a me society versus a we
Yeah,
society. And that society can be in one country or another. It could be really with a global pandemic. The human condition is everyone,
that's it. Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, if
everyone.
we work together collaboratively on this, look at what can happen. And I think We've seen so much innovation through this time as well, people collaborating in different ways and, going through celebrations in a virtual way and just changing the way we live. And it's going to be the new norm.
Oh yeah, I'm like new normal. It just is now. Just
Yeah.
like it was a cute phrase maybe a few months ago. Now it's just this is it. This is who we are. This is what we do. This is how we be. If you needed to say it that way.
Yep. So
Yeah,
true. Yep.
yeah. It's also interesting to me, and we're gonna have to take a break, and then we'll come back and talk about it a little bit more. Is you talked about it, this adversity and this year. And so I want the listeners to know a little bit more about you as it pertains to your awesomeness and how you've gotten to where you are right now, because we all know that adversity happens, and some of the hardest things that we face, maybe a listener out there this year has been their hardest. Like this has been the
Yeah.
hardest. And
Mm-hmm.
you and I both know that there is something greater on the other side. So I want to make sure that we dive a little deeper into that right after the break. Bindi, I want to ask you to share a little bit more with our listeners about perhaps a time where you had an ugly cry of sorts, where things just didn't go the way you thought they were going to go. And for me, I was in a bathroom stall crying my eyes out, having this really can barely catch your breath kind of a cry that ended up catapulting me into what I do now. Share with the listeners a little bit about maybe your story and perhaps an ugly cry.
Oh my gosh, Roshana. I can't count the number of ugly cries, to be honest with you.
Right? Yes.
I guess if I were to summarize,
Yeah.
like we were talking about adversity, you name it, I've been through it. Trauma, abuse, redundancy, bankruptcy, all kinds of things. And, any trauma that we go through, I think if we can process it as an opportunity for growth, we're going to get out the other side. So one of the things that I learned was that, I'd been through so many things. I'm like, why are these things happening to me? And, what can I learn from them? And it's kind of that analogy. I'm not sure if you've heard it. It's a bit like a trampoline. You've got to get down before you get back up again. So
Ooh, I like that. I've never heard
yeah,
that.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, when you do fall down, it's all about having the courage and the strength to get back up again. So without the fall, you can't get back up again, right?
Right.
So it's all about understanding that contrast with the highs and the lows, and without one, you don't have the other. So if you can break it down to, that simplicity, you'll understand that, okay, yeah, I need to do this so I can get back up to where I need to be.
Right.
And that's how I've pretty much got through everything. And, people who've known me for decades have seen me change remarkably. Just this year, I have changed significantly. And it's like I've actually got this formula for change because of understanding when we get down, we've got to get back up again. There's no other way.
Yeah, there's it the change that has to happen only happens when you get back up. Otherwise, you're just down, and that's where you end up staying. And for some people, they get something out of staying down there, like I'm down. But the ones that create change, that see a movement, that then are able to not only help themselves but help others, are able to really understand that the down is required in order for the up, and for not only just the one up, but for the up to be something that can be sustained and bear a load for others. Say
exactly
more.
right. Yeah. And it's an evolution. It's ongoing. It's never ending. As long as we breathe, we need to go through this cycle, and we will. And I think if we can just train ourselves to understand that, this will pass and that there are better times ahead. It's all in our belief systems as well. And you and I've spoken about this previously, but it's all about how we process that.
Yeah, how when it comes, what does it come for? And you use the word formula, and the engineer in me goes, yes, There's a pattern, there's a
There is.
formula,
Yeah.
always a formula. Tell the listeners a little bit, what have you seen as a formula to create change and growth?
So probably one of the most important things that you need to do to create change is you need to be consistent. So without consistent action, you can't have change.
Mhm.
So and when you develop a routine, you'll find that it becomes a habit, and that change just embeds. So for me this year, that has been so important just to get through this year, because when you don't have that same routine and everything's changing, and oh, how do I do things now? It's again finding that new normal, finding that new routine, and being consistent and sticking to it and committing to it. And if you are wanting to make positive change in a time that's very uncertain, you actually really need that consistent action.
Yeah. You need the consistency is the beacon.
Mm,
It's the thing to hold on to. I remember even when there was uncertainty around, okay, are the kids going to go back to school or not? I was like, still get up, get up,
mm,
get
yeah.
up, get dressed. That's the same thing that I put in place when I resigned from my job, when I stopped working and started running my business. I was like, I will get up. I'm going to get
Mm,
dressed. I'm going, right? Like, there are just some things that if you can do those, some
yeah,
people would say, well, that doesn't matter. It absolutely matters.
it does. It changes your mindset, and it's all coming back to your purpose and your passion as well. Like, and getting back to those things that light you up. I think if you can find those in every day, and it can be the smallest things, absolutely the smallest things, like listening to your favorite song or whatever it might be.
Mhm.
Just finding that little bit of passion in your day that lights you up, it's going to change your whole mindset and your whole day and its outcomes.
Yeah, it allows you to set the course and the tone for your day rather than the day setting it for you. You're intentional about saying, get up,
Yeah,
get going. Today we will
yeah,
be ethical change agents, and this is what that's going to look like today.
yeah. So it's more about not letting the day happen to you,
Hmm.
the other way around.
That's right. Yes, you happen to the day. It's one of the hardest things I think for some that struggle to find their gift and their talent, what I like to call awesomeness,
Yep.
is that some spend their whole lives looking for it rather than if they were paying attention to the days that they were in the small moments, they would
Hmm.
discover it.
So
So
true.
yeah, is there one thing that you can think about that that's almost surprising to you in this year about what you're able to do and accomplish or be in this world?
Wow. Look, you know what? I have made some of the most powerful connections this year that I don't think would have been possible without the pandemic. Um, and we've had to change the way we connect with each other, clearly. So much opportunity, and literally the world has opened up for me.
Mm.
And like I was struggling before the pandemic to reach out to people, and now it's just flowing, like,
Mhm.
yeah. So I have friends all around the world now that I didn't have at the beginning of the year. And, business opportunities, growth for myself and other people in my circle that I just never thought would have happened.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not even what you could have conceived, right? Like
No,
if you would have said at the beginning of this year, I'm going to work with these people, it
yeah.
probably wouldn't have been those people because you didn't know them. Or yeah, it's amazing to me when I look at the work that you do, your story, just who you are, and the heart that you have, understanding how this year for many would some just wrote it off.
Mm,
March, April, they were like, I'm done. It's
yeah.
over. Like we'll just pick it up. It's December. So they're probably like, okay, now let's think about 2021. That
Yeah.
wasn't you. That wasn't
Yep.
you. When when the George Floyd incident happened here and the tragedy of that
Mm,
event that really rocked me to my core, that shook the community, that really for the world, for the first time, I think there were many who were awakened to this sense of, oh, like this, not only is this bad, but like this is just continuing to get bad and will get worse. And so we have to
mm,
speak up. And so that's one of the things that will always stand out to me about you, is that you reached really far and wide to say, let's talk about this and let's have conversations about this. And you even got some
Yeah.
backlash. Yeah, let's talk
Yeah.
about.
Yeah. So I went down a bit of a rabbit hole with all the media because we're very connected to the media in the States here. And yeah, when that happened, I was like, oh, like I get messages basically on what I need to share. And so when I saw this, I was like, okay, I know I'm here to be a messenger. That's my purpose. I'm here to be a messenger, and I need to have the conversations that no one else will have. And so you and I and another friend of ours got together and we spoke about this. And if you can't see me but you can hear me right now, I'm white, right? I'm here in Australia. I'm privileged. I'm white. So we spoke about that, and that's not an easy thing for someone who's white to do, right?
Mhm.
Particularly when you're from Australia. So you were so gracious and giving at that time, and I have to thank you for that. And I
Absolutely.
grew through that experience, and yeah, some people did you know have a go at me for doing it, but I'm not bothered because I had the conversation that had to be had, and it opened people's eyes to both sides of the story.
Mhm. Yeah, it's one of the things that until you're in a safe place
Mm,
with people that you feel comfortable with, it's hard to say, I have privilege, or I don't know. I
mm,
don't know. How do I know? And that can be for someone that is white or has a skin tone that's white, that lives in a culture that's more black or more ethnic or more colored, however you want to say that. It's
mm.
also the understanding that that same type of conversation has to be had at many levels and many times. And it isn't a destination, it's truly a journey that
Mm.
happens over the course of someone's life, because we're
Yeah,
always evolving, or we
that's
should
so
be.
true. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think for me, one of the things and why I wanted to do this was that, there was people having so many conversations here about it, and they were ignorant. They didn't understand what it was like to grow up black in America.
Yeah.
They don't understand the life that you've had to live.
Mhm.
So it was really putting yourself in someone else's shoes and understanding with compassion and kindness that they're human and that we're all the same.
Yeah. Yeah, like we experience loss at, like, as a human, loss
Yeah.
happens. And there are two things that will really happen. There is a birth that happens in our life, there's a death that happens in our life. And because of that, these are human conditions. And when someone, whether you know them or not, is treated wrong, or as we saw, we just have video footage, right? Like that went
Yeah.
across the world. Like that's just something you can't ignore.
Yeah.
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 You
And
just,
we spoke with our friend Cherie,
yeah,
and
Cherie.
everything that happens is necessary.
Mhm.
Um, Everything that happens is meant to happen, and I know it can be very, very difficult to understand that.
Yeah.
But look at the change that's happened because of this. Look at the awareness and the the openness that we now have in that space that we didn't have before.
Yeah. We didn't have really safe places, or even the awareness for some, or the context that was needed to set up to be able to have these types of conversations. And now we have those, and I'm grateful for it too. It's sad that it had to happen,
Yeah.
but I'm a believer like you are that everything happens and can be turned for good. And it's all a part of the process of raising
Mm.
our level of understanding, for sure.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
one of the things I just want to make sure that we just touch on quickly before we get ready to wrap up, because it's crazy how fast the show goes.
I
That's
know.
why you're invited back anytime, and that's why
Thank you.
um, absolutely I want us to keep talking, is because we there's this part of humanity that, as we are getting ready to enter into a new year, this newness usually creates excitement. And
Mhm.
you are a student of change, and the excitement is what gets people like going and off the couch. And then after that, that excitement kind of goes like, oh, this is work.
Yeah.
And then there has to be something else. So I want you to just share kind of like understanding we are getting ready to get into a new year. Maybe people are going to be watching this months later and they're starting to step out into a new change. What are some things that people can do to continue to be consistent and persist through their change?
Yeah. I guess one of the things for me is to be your own inspiration. Um, and for me, I look at how far I've come,
Mm-hmm.
and that is a huge thing for me to look at where I was and where I am now, and that I did that. I created that change. And there's so many transformations I've gone through in my many decades, and I look back and I go, damn girl, you are inspiring. And it's a constant thing I get from so many people is that I'm such an inspiration to them. So that itself spurs me on. So it's really the results that really keep you going forward. So as long as you keep reflecting, I think you've got to acknowledge it, reflect, and then repeat.
And then repeat.
Mm,
Acknowledge, reflect, repeat. And so,
mm.
Bindi, for those that are interested in learning more about what you do and working with you, where can they find you and share a little bit more about where you are on social media and other places?
Yeah. Yeah, so you can find me at ethicalchangeagency.com. I'm also on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook at Ethical Change Agency. But yeah, I work with people globally. We do things like coaching for communications. Also, I help people start podcasts and things like that. So if you have a message you want to get out there and you want to get amplified, I'm your gal. I'm the one.
I love it. And she is. I would say so. So reach out to her. And if for some reason after this you're like, well, Shauna, where do I find her? You can always email me at radio@giverofawesomeness.com and I will make sure that you get in contact with Bindi. So thank you so much for being here, Bindi.
Thank you so much, Rashona. I'm so grateful for this opportunity.
Absolutely. And so for those of you that loved this conversation today, continue to tune in every Saturday at 3 p.m. on iHeartRadio and with WDRB Media, the voice of the community, the only station giving you double the information and inspiration. Until next time, continue to be blessed and remember, awesomeness is in you.